Nice.
Don't we
Okay,
look
there we go.
fancy?
Now we have microphone.
All
Looks
right.
nice.
And that microphone.
Here's batteries.
Hello. Okay, it's working. Just making sure.
Cool.
Just came in late.
Yeah.
Sorry. If it doesn't work out, I think we're here. Yeah, no, it'll be relaxed.
I will try to get this,
That mic is
I'll
always
try
trouble
different- Try different battery maybe.
whenever you gotta talk.
Okay,
it.
but I'll let you go ahead and start.
Okay.
Sorry for the delay.
No, excellent. Thank you for getting everything there, Melanie. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order. And do a roll call, please.
Okay. Commissioner Berezinski is absent. Commissioner Dolzall,
Here.
Commissioner Owens,
Here.
Chair Moriarty,
Here.
Commissioner Dobbs,
Here.
Commissioner Litke,
Here.
and Commissioner Parson.
Here.
Okay, we
Excellent.
have a quorum. Thank you.
Excellent. Okay, moving on to the consent agenda. I'm sure everyone read over everything. Thank you, Melanie, for all that. All the nice little bullet points there, separating everything. Do I have a motion to approve the November 1st, 2022 meeting minutes?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Okay, do I have a second? Second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Okay, motion passes. On to community comments. Okay. Anybody up there?
We have nobody online.
Okay. Right, so I guess it's on to presentations and reports. Chief Mendoza, you're up.
Can you just
Thank you again for making time out of your day during this wonderful sunny day.
Mhm.
Yes, and I'll just go ahead and introduce Lieutenant Mendoza. He's our police chief. We call him, works through our contract with the sheriff's office. And it's been great. I'm kind of new at this, obviously being a new city manager. I've been involved slightly, but it's been great to work with Lieutenant Mendoza and just learning how the contract works and working together. And I don't know if you saw last night, the Facebook post that we put out looking for somebody who was a suspect in an incident, and that turned out to be really helpful. So I don't know if that's something that will continue or not, but it was helpful last night anyway. So, and that was Deputy Bigler that had worked on that. So I'm gonna pull this up and share my screen so that you can see this.
Yeah, well, I'll just start out, say I'm glad to be here, happy to do this. Actually been kind of looking forward to it. Like Melanie said, I am Lieutenant Marcus Mendoza, work for the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, and I serve as your police chief here for Estacada. We are going to do a presentation on the municipal law enforcement service contracts that the Sheriff's Office provides. This is an overview of the contracts that we do currently. It's Estacada, Wilsonville, and Happy Valley. There's some few differences here, and we might skip over some stuff that kind of goes a little bit in depth on some history and in depth on a few other things that we can cut out. But if there's more questions, I'm happy to answer those for you. Melanie and I will work together on moving through here. So a little bit of history. It's kind of interesting. So Wilsonville and Estacada, I think, are the oldest contract. Estacada is the oldest contract, but both Estacada and Wilsonville started in the another document I found was in the 70s, but specifically 1978 is when Estacada began contracting law enforcement services with the Sheriff's Office.
Wow.
Estacada is known for, as being our longest contract. There was a break in there, but it was the first one that we had. And I was able to dig up this picture of, I think that was a 75 car. So
That's
give you guys a little
That's
history
awesome.
there. So part of this I'll read through and part of it I'll go off the cuff. But so it was new cities we're incorporating and looking for the need for law enforcement services or police services in the city. I guess the basic background, right, is that the sheriff's office provides law enforcement services for areas outside of city limits. And for cities, they have police departments. And some cities have chosen to contract with other offices or the sheriff's office for law enforcement services, to provide those police services within the city limits. So that's just the basic difference between the police department and the sheriff's office. Sheriff's office has a bunch of other responsibilities, as you probably know, running a jail, search and rescue, marine patrol, civil services, which serving civil papers that are issued by the courts. Law enforcement or patrol services aren't the only thing the sheriff's office does, but a police department generally just does police services or law enforcement services. And then part of the reason that these contracts started was the meeting individual needs for those specific cities. And really, I don't think it goes into it later, but startup cost for starting your own police department, and those costs are high when you start thinking about, you know, the facilities and finding the personnel and just your basic startup, where you can contract with the sheriff's office, and it's all rolled into one price essentially, right? The shop's already open. Go to the next slide there. Today, the sheriff's office does provide contracts with other entities throughout the county, and I just threw the logos up there. So Clackamas, North Clackamas Schools, the Oregon Marine Board, that's a large contract that we have to provide basically our marine officers on the boats and patrol the waterways. BLM, Forest Service, North Clackamas Parks, ODOT, and I know I left a couple off, my apologies. The way that I'll go into this now. So the way that Estacada's contract works, I serve as your police chief, but it's on a part-time basis. Roughly 15% of my time is allotted towards Estacada, and then the rest of my time gets divvied up between several other things. But I also run some of these other contracts like the BLM. Actually, I have somebody in all of them except for North Clackamas schools. So getting a lot more familiar with all of these contracts. We'll go to the next one. The next slide is just kind of an overview. I pulled the 2021 population for Estacada, Happy Valley, and Wilsonville. So you can see those there. And that's just a map. You'll see kind of like the purplish colors are where those cities are. On the next slides, why do we contract? That improves service delivery for all residents. The way they put it here is leverages comparatively lower resource levels. So economies of scale or efficiencies. If it would be difficult for a small city to have all the resources that the sheriff's office can bring to you. And it's kind of rolled up into one. I won't go into too much in depth on exactly what we contract, but we can maybe do that more, or if you guys have questions. But the city of Estacada contracts currently with 3 deputies, 2 are on patrol and 1 is a school resource officer. And then my position is 15%. But in addition to that, you also get, if there's any detective services that are needed, any of our special needs, right? And we can go into some of those later, but all of those would also come and help the city of Estacada if you need it. And that's included in the kind of the overall contract. It's beneficial for both sides, shared operating efficiencies. It also provides a greater opportunity and diversity for staff, both for the city and for the sheriff's office. Sheriff's office is able to hire more deputies this way, right? Give them more experiences, more diverse experience in their duties, a more diverse workforce. And then the city of Escate also benefits from both that, just the diverse workforce and the diverse opportunities that they have. Working more rural areas, busier areas, smaller town, that, all of that, I guess, breadth of experience, is benefited by both parties. In here's increased experience through specialization, training, and professional development. Obviously, we're a large organization and we do a lot of training for our personnel. And so the cities that we contract benefit from all that training that our deputies get. And then allows cities to pay only for the what they're using. As I mentioned earlier, right, a smaller town is not going to necessarily be able to justify the expense for a lot of specialized units of canines come to mind. That's having a canine division or just a canine officer, right? Gets to be pretty pricey when you think about all the training that goes into that, traffic teams, things like that. We can go to the next, and this kind of just shows you kind of overview of the sheriff's office listed out there. There's several different units that are available. Our craft team is a criminal reconstruction and forensic technicians team. They respond to not only serious traffic crashes and figure out if there's a serious injury or fatality, exactly what happened, but they also go to major crime scenes and work with our detectives, and they will actually scan it with a laser and can reproduce that scene. So that is really interesting, the way technology goes, but you can actually put, we can get it in front of the DA's office and a jury if it goes to trial, and they can put on the VR headsets and actually walk through a crime scene and see what it was like at the time that happened. So whether that's out on the road or, inside a residence, but that's something that we have the capability of. And just to list a few, we have bomb technicians that are on the Metro Bomb Squad, crisis negotiations, crime scene investigators, our entire detective division, dive, Marine, air units. We partner with a lot of agencies for our Family Justice Center, which is a domestic violence resource center. We have forensic sketch artists, as I mentioned earlier, a canine team, search and rescue, SWAT, and trauma intervention program, and a chaplain. And there's other units that we have here at the sheriff's office that aren't listed there. So this goes in, this might be, I might just kind of do an overview of this, but this just talks about how we restarted, and what they're saying is we started those contracts back in 78. In 2007, the sheriff commissioned this FCS group to do basically a study to find out basically what is this costing the sheriff's office to provide the service. What they determined was that the sheriff's office was charging far less than what we were actually providing. I believe what happened, and not knowing all the history, but I believe what they found was for the contracts, we were just charging you have this, deputy A, and that's the deputy's wage, and you were reimbursing for that. Now what we do is there's a whole reimbursement model, cost book, I think is what we call it, it includes their uniforms, their vehicle, there's and a lot amount for overtime. They actually have a formula where they look at how many detectives we have, how much time they spend on different types of crimes, divide that by the population, and then come up with a formula of what to charge the city for the detective division's time. There are some pass-through costs, which are direct costs that we know, like what our dispatch center charges us per deputy, dispatch, and what's the other one that's a straight pass? Do you remember? I'll think of it. But there's a couple of things like that. There's just a straight pass-through cost that we can show. And that's what this restart was. And so what we did was we took our partners, Estacada, Happy Valley, and Wilsonville, and they went to look at the models that they had up in King County, Washington. They have several contracts there. And kind of looked at how they did business, and through their research, they revamped it essentially. And we can probably cut. Let's see if there's anything else. Let me go to where the top says goals. I think it's one more page. There we go. So yeah, looking for better working relations between the sheriff's office and the cities. They revamped the contracts, or better contract language, better billing costs and recovery model. So they developed the new cost model and new IGA. If you go to the next one, this kind of goes over the new contract overview, which is what we're in right now. We are actually currently discussing with the city managers and the sheriff's office about reopening these contracts. What we're finding just over time, that there are probably some areas that we could take another look at to make sure that we have the contracts language correct, and what's beneficial for both sides. So what happened was the cities negotiated as a group, and then with the sheriff's office as a group. It was just a cooperative effort between the city councils, the sheriff's office, and the Board of County Commissioners. And there's an oversight committee that we meet once a quarter. Melanie represents the city on that. I represent the sheriff's office in the city of Estacada, and then in that would be the city managers, the sheriff with their designee, which is usually our undersheriff, at the patrol division commander, but it's usually the undersheriff, and the chiefs from the various cities. Like I said, we meet quarterly just to talk about any issues that are come up with contract, what's going on in the cities, if there's any issues that we need to address. Right now, what we've been really looking at is, again, to just reiterate, kind of opening up the contract again to fix some language in there that we would all agree with. The next slide is, the approach is the economy of scale. It's a mutually advantageous for the cities and the sheriff's office to contract. I could tell you that from the sheriff's office point of view, we value and appreciate these contracts because it does give us variety for our deputies. We do have additional deputies. I can say that don't quote me on these numbers, but we're probably in like 43 or so deputies that are in contracts. Obviously, Wilsonville and Happy Valley have the largest contracts. They're up around 20 deputies there. And then here in Estacada, the 3. And I think overall, the sheriff's office were around at like 164 deputy FTEs, to give you an idea. So 164 total, 43-ish of those are in contract cities. So that's a good chunk. The county recovers its full cost for personnel and allocation of other expenses. It gives an option for cities who either cannot afford or do not want to pay the full amount that it would take to stand up an entire police department. Neither party subsidizes the other, which is important. If specifically for Estacada, if the deputy is not here working, then you're not paying. It's kind of as basic as that. Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah. So there are two different contract models. The city of Estacada falls into what we call the flexible services model. there's a city department model. We can go to the next. So the flexible services, we treat Estacada as one of our patrol districts, and it has a shared supervision with a Clackamas County Sergeant. And what that means is we don't have full-time coverage in Estacada.
Mhm.
When there's not an Estacada deputy here, then the city of Estacada lies within our East County district. And if there's no city deputy here, then it's up to the deputy that's working at East County district to respond here. So that's important. That would be important to you because what you're really talking about is response time. When there's a deputy here in the city, our goal is for a 5-minute response time to any priority 1 or priority 2 call. We're pretty close to that. I think, I don't think this is in the
It's in
overview.
this.
Is it in there?
Yeah,
I think that it was like 6 minutes, or
Yeah.
close to that. Where your, county response time, to that same call would be around 20 minutes. So there's a pretty drastic difference then. When there's deputy in town, and that's the average, right? Or response, priority 1 or 2 call to be there within 5 minutes. When they're not in town, it bumps up to about 20 minutes. 20 minutes is the goal for our county districts for that. So you're on par with what that goal is. The city is actively working towards additional deputies to be assigned here in the city. We've had a request in. We have a request in currently for another deputy. It'll take, my hope is September for that, but it takes about a year to get a deputy here in the city, or at least that's what we're looking at right now, because the sheriff's office, Clackamas County Sheriff's Office, like every other law enforcement agency at the moment, is, we're fighting over qualified people and trying to find good qualified deputies to hire. And so we're working hard at that right now, and we can go into, I could talk a lot about this, but we can go into more later if you want. We hired 30 deputies last year, and we've hired somewhere around 18 this year. So we are full throttle on hiring. It's just a matter of finding good qualified people. The point to that is we are working to fill vacancies at the sheriff's office as a whole, which is why Estacada and I think Happy Valley is also requesting another deputy. That's why you have to wait a year till we can have that deputy to place here in the city. In the flexible services model, the deputy's absence is not backfilled in that it's not a mandatory position. So I'll give you an example. If the city deputy that's supposed to be here today called in sick, and he's not filling that district or that spot, we don't bring somebody on overtime to fill that spot. It again reverts back to the district deputy is now responsible. Whoever's East County now responds here. The city does have the option to pay overtime for those to backfill that. But it's not a mandatory position, meaning that the sheriff's office or the city do not have to mandatorily place somebody here, whether we call someone out on overtime, whether they want to be here or we make them come work, if that makes sense. And then ignore the sheriff's department and vehicles. Overtime line would cover basic maintenance training and some court appearances. Yeah, it's just basically covering that. Where every deputy is going to have court and training, but if it's training that is for a county, so I'll give you an example. It's for a county team or a county benefit, then the city is in charge for that. My example for that is one of our deputies here. Actually, we have 2 deputies here. They're on special teams. One's on search and rescue. One is on our dive team. The deputy on the dive team has regular training twice a month on Thursdays. The city of SK doesn't pay that 10 hours that he's at dive training. He actually comes in, we've worked out a deal where he comes in the following day and works an additional 10 hours at the school. So the school still gets their 40 hours. If he wasn't here for that 10 hours, the city wouldn't have to pay for that time. So you're really paying for what you get. This option is only available to if your population is under 10,000 or if you have 5 or fewer positions. So that is what Estacada is in. The city department model, and I'll just cover this real quick because this is important too, because the city
Where
of
we're
Estacada
heading,
is,
pretty much.
you know, we're on our way to there, to that point anyway. So that's where you will have full or, you know, full 24-hour coverage or really close, depending on how we staff that. And again, that's dedicated. So those positions would then be mandatory. So if we were on the city department model, your deputy that is here, if they were sick that day, we have an obligation to have somebody here. So we would have to move someone from the county here if we had an extra body. We would call somebody in on overtime, whether that was mandatory overtime or optional overtime. But somebody would be required to be here in the city. There is a little bit of give and take with that. I've noticed some of the struggles in, say, Happy Valley and Wilsonville for meeting that mandatory, but it is, you know, again, it's mandatory, so we have to place somebody here in the city.
In the past, we haven't done that because of financial capacity to do that. And so because to pay that overtime was just, it went above and beyond what we could manage. But we're heading in that direction where it's, you know, not only do we potentially need it more, it's more, hopefully we don't need it. You know, if it's like that insurance policy, you don't want to use it, but you want it when you need it, you want to have a fast response time. And we're getting to a point where financially the city will be able to manage that to size that we could manage moving towards that city model, which I think is going to be, it'll be good.
The plan right now, as it sits, is we've requested for an additional deputy. And then once we realize that one, the request will go in for another one. So that'll bring you to 4 patrol deputies and 1 school resource officer. And I have to give the city council, you know, credit. This position was new for me. So it's a, you know, I've got a lot to learn and figuring out like how the contracts work and serving as the police chief. But the city council is eager, I would say, to get to a full-time police force. And really one of the things that I learned is it used to be that when you looked at police staffing, you looked at, you know, number of law enforcement officers per, you know, some ratio of the population per 1,000 or whatever that number was that they used to calculate that. What I've learned is that that's kind of the old way of looking at how many, how much staff you need. The new way of doing that is actually looking at response time and what you want your response time to be. And I already explained to you that basically 5 minutes when someone's here and 20 minutes when they're not. So what you're really paying for is to have that 5-minute response time 24 hours a day.
Mhm.
And that's the benefit of being in a city. The residents of the county that live outside of the city, they have a 20-minute response time 24/7 essentially. And that's just because of the distance that deputies have to travel.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Yes, ma'am.
What's the time frame that we don't have coverage? I mean, as someone that's here and
Yeah, we basically it's overnight, the graveyard shift.
okay,
And this, so the command structure in a full service is you do have a police chief that is generally that's funded 100%. I think we were kind of discussing that maybe that might be 50% until the staffing went higher. But what you would get is a sergeant that would work here in the city of Escada that would supervise the deputies here, that will also provide some response to calls and whatnot. And then your police chief would probably be more like 50% at that point. And then we work together with the city to provide direction, and then the city sets the goals and priorities, input and guidance from the CCSO to determine how many deputies you need, want, and it just ends up growing for this full city model. And I'll give you an example. The Happy Valley and Wilsonville both have community service officers that are like desk officers that take phone calls and people that walk in or do phone reports. They also do some crime prevention work. And they have, both of them have detectives that are assigned to the cities because they're growing. So that as the city of Escada grows, those roles options, instead of having to be a part of the service, like we can bring it in if we need it, you would have a dedicated detective or a dedicated community service officer. This goes into the chief recruitment. The sheriff's office provides eligible personnel, and the city selects who they want. I'm gonna actually, we can go ahead and end it there. If let's see if there's any key points specifically for Escada. The SRO works in our school, or in all of the schools, but he's mainly in the high school. And obviously that's during the school year. In the summertime, he comes out and he works patrol and helps supplement our patrol division. It's nice in the summertime. We ran into some problems this year, but it's nice in the summertime because that extra body kind of helps with time off. We had, I don't say unfortunately, but we had one deputy that was in the military. He was on military orders and it was gone for 6 months. So we had to kind of scramble to figure out how to solve that issue with this particular contract. So we ended up with a new deputy here for a short period of time. He'll be here for 6 months, and then that deputy, actually Deputy Norman, just returned this week. And so at the next, the sheriff's office does their schedules, we call it by bump. So every 6 months, there's a new schedule. So in March, he'll be back out in Estacada.
I'm glad he got back safely.
Yes.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And we
hear.
appreciate his
Yeah.
service,
Yeah.
even while he was gone from here. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there, am I missing anything specific to
I don't
Estacada?
think so. Did you have questions or ways that you'd like to see Lieutenant Mendoza be involved? Did he just come? This is kind of a big overview, so you understand how our contract works at this point. But if you just are looking for like a monthly update at your meetings, or if you have, do you have thoughts about how you want him to be involved?
What does everyone think?
Let me give you just a couple more tidbits while you think
Sure.
about that. So,
Yeah.
so 15% of my time goes to the city of Estacada. The rest of my time, I supervise our Marine units, our traffic team, which that's right up your guys' alley. You might be interested in that. Our dive team, search and rescue. I know I'm leaving somebody out. There might be one or two other things, but I have others. I supervise a bunch of special units at the sheriff's office, and then have the city of Estacada. So, and a little bit of my background, I spent some time as a traffic enforcement deputy and a traffic supervisor, and so I definitely look at things from that kind of angle, and so with this being the traffic safety committee, I can definitely offer you guys some advice on topics that may come up. It's definitely something I have a background in. But other than that, I've done a lot in law enforcement. Probably too much to even remember. I've been doing this, I might look younger, but I've been at this for 22 years. So I've been doing it for a while, so I can hopefully answer your questions on things.
Excellent.
Awesome.
I know last meeting, we had several things that were brought up law enforcement related. Do you want to bring those up now, or is that a good time, or does that
Sure.
need to be
We
done?
can do that. My house is in the process of getting some hardwood floors, so my office is presently in the kitchen and living room.
I
So
have
I'm
some of
gonna-
those, Yeah.
Brandy has some of those. I
Um,
can't find them.
I know one of our concerns was with the speeding in town was something we
Yeah, that's
talked
right.
about. And then I'm trying to think of things specific for this. I'm looking at, okay,
I know we
Speeding
talked
in
about the issue with placing a resource officer in all the schools.
yeah, we talked about that too.
And I think
and
that needs to be a high priority.
I think so too, because we were talking about, and we don't know if it's something we can do, arrange it a different way. But having a resource officer in every school was something that we were talking about. It was super important.
Sure.
Especially with, the way the world is changing right now.
I know a lot of law enforcement officers work extra jobs. So does your agency allow deputies to come in, even if the city's paying for it, but are they allowed to work overtime jobs? And if so, would that be something that we could discuss with the city and you guys to pay those overtime? So we could have, we have 4 schools is what I was told.
Right.
So we have 1 deputy to cover 4 schools, which, as you know, is not the ideal way to do it. We would like to have 1 in every one. So if we were willing to or able to, with city council approval, I'm sure, pay the deputy salaries to come in, do you have enough staff that would be willing to come in and do that?
So that's a great question. That you brought up a good point. The sheriff's office does not allow our deputies to work off duty in a law enforcement type capacity. And that could be even as a security guard, things like that. There are agencies that do that. I think that's probably pretty predominant across the nation that places do that. I don't know about our local area, if there are other jurisdictions that do allow their officers or deputies to work off duty in that type of capacity. That I'm not sure of.
So you have no deputies on the department or on the sheriff's office that work anything outside of their regular sheriff duties. They're not allowed to go and be paid by anybody else to do law enforcement work.
That's correct.
Has that been standard practice the whole time, or is
That
that a new
is-
thing, or?
That is a policy of the Clackamas County Sheriff's Office. And so, and forgive me for not knowing this off the top of my head. I don't know how long that policy has been that way, but that was just revised this year. And I know for a fact that is our policy, that they're not allowed to do that. And I think it's been that way for some time.
Well, okay.
Where you could, so we did discuss this last week. Where I think if that's your recommendation and that's what the decision that was made, I think that your best bet honestly would be to find retired law enforcement to fill those positions. I think that the cost for standing that up at, frankly, I don't know the total number off the top of my head for the estimated contract, but it's right around $800,000. And if you're looking at, that's 3.15 FTE, three positions. 8 is, and you would need 3 more people for the other 3 schools. So that you're looking at.
Right, but you'd have to consider to be on a part-time basis. We're talking about maybe from 8 AM to 3 PM. And then the other question that kind of rolls into that is the 1 deputy that is assigned to the schools, does he also come back and work all of the functions at the stadiums, at the football games? Does he provide security for them as well? So, I mean, it just seems like that 1 person is that's too much.
Yeah,
I mean, it's
we-
too much
we
to
do a lot.
concentrate on.
We do a lot. Yes, he does attend the football games and go to the functions. Our SROs typically will do that. Sometimes it's done on, well, it would be done on like an overtime basis because it's going to be outside of his normal hours. I know that they attend the football games and try to make it to like the school dances and those larger type functions. We were a part of the parade, taking the football team out of town last week. Yeah, it's a big job and a big task for one person. So I totally understand where you're coming from on looking for additional resources to fill those voids. I'm just providing you my opinion of that. If you're going to, you'd have a scale of who you could hire to do that job, right? The scale of like your lowest level security guard, lowest trained, lowest paid, all the way up to, you know, full-time sworn law enforcement. And you know, the price is going to go up depending on who you hire. I can tell you right now that we're waiting 1 year to get another patrol deputy here in Estacada. So we could very easily put in a request to say we want 3 more SROs, but I can tell you the sheriff's office could not fulfill that for some time. We're waiting 1 year for another deputy.
Can I interject a couple thoughts? So the city splits the cost of the SRO with the school district. And so, and then obviously the deputy comes and works for the city. He also, this deputy is pretty ambitious. He's hoping the one we have now is wanting to do some detective training when, like, if there's not school, so that his skills, because a lot of the times it's doing, I don't want to say detective work, but, you know, he's working with kids, young people, figuring out what happened in certain situations, and those skills would be helpful. And so this might be something that you want to do some research on as for a recommendation. And maybe, so the SROs that we have, I believe they get special training. I know that our SRO, Deputy Olson, just did some special training specifically geared to SROs at the end of the summer. And so you typically don't just toss any deputy like this is what they're used to doing, and now you're working in the school. But, you know, maybe that's something you want to make a recommendation of as we're bringing on the next deputy next year. If the school district's up for it, if this, I don't know if they can do this, but if this person was trained as an SRO also, you know, could they spend part of their time, and instead of having an office here at City Hall, could they have an office in the school? They're serving the city as well, but they're, you know, that, and I don't know if the school district's up for that or not. But that might be one way to kind of help cover and have more. They wouldn't be specifically an SRO, but that might be one way to get into that and start increasing it.
That's actually, so that's an interesting idea. And if, depending on how the city wants to go about, like where, so currently our deputies have office space here at City Hall. And just outside of town, if you're familiar, there's a rest stop that they'll use where they have, it's essentially a break room where they can sit down, take a break and do some work. If there were office space for our deputies at the different schools that they could use, or maybe even setting up, so you have 3 deputies, you know, 3 offices, and each have an office, and you would get more patrol or traffic at those schools, right? Because the deputies are going to go there to write their reports and then be more present at the school. That might be, you know, an interesting idea.
I mean, they could
A low
leave
cost idea.
every, you know, like you said, stay at the school, and then maybe once every 2 hours. Crime's not always happening in Estacada, as you know. I mean, that's why everyone wants to move here. So there's no need really to be constantly moving around a small city like that. It's just cost effective with gas and everything. But yeah, if he could stay at the school, but every 2 or 3 hours, make a loop and then come back to the school. That way the neighborhoods are seeing them, but primarily they're at the school. That might be,
That might be a
way to
good
do it.
partnership with the school
Yeah.
district. We'd have to, we could look into that some more and
Be good.
if you all want to do some more research on your own to see how other places might make that work.
who would we
Yeah.
need to talk to at with the school to do that? I mean, will we need to have one of them come into our meeting and discuss this, or is this something that we have, one of you guys call and just
Someone in the
inquire
district
about it?
office, or is it the superintendent's office, or?
Yeah, probably that would be a good place to start. How to reach out to, let me think about that a little bit.
Okay.
And if you want me to, I can let them know that the Traffic and Public Safety Committee is looking into ways to increase safety at schools if they're interested in, partnering on that or learning, exploring that option. That you're not necessarily making a formal recommendation at this point, but you're looking into it. I could see who they could talk to, who you could talk to up there.
And throw Lieutenant Mendoza's name in there
There you
too,
go.
if he's willing to back it. Just to
Yeah.
add more credence to it, that he's on board, so.
Okay.
There was a few more
And
things.
there's, other issues, Lieutenant Mendoza, just, going to pick up my granddaughter up at Rivermill. People are just flying,
Mhm.
when I get out of my wife's car, just because my truck is too big to park there on the street, and I walk all the way there, and I'm just like, it's just shocking, and some mornings. Or people have called, right in front of the high school with all the buses parked on either side of the street. I can't use my Ram 3500 because I go into the other lane to try to avoid the bus, just going there. It's just, or even the other issue is people coming down to the school
Mhm.
aren't observing the traffic speed limit. It really gets me going.
No,
Anytime I'm around the schools,
yeah,
it just,
It's
Yeah.
terrible.
anywhere from 2:30 to 3:30, just, I'm like, people are just oblivious to the 4 schools we have. It's just, I don't understand it sometimes.
I think that's fairly consistent.
Right.
Anywhere you go, to be honest.
Absolutely.
But one of the things that we could offer is we got it up and running. We had some equipment failure, and so we're fixing it. But we have we call speed trailer.
Yeah, we talked
Um,
about that.
It's a little bit larger than probably most that you see. This one actually has a reader board on it, but it
Oh,
it has the radar and it will display a speed, put a message on it. But the interesting thing with this trailer is that it, probably like most are right now, they collect data as well. And so, and the city has, is it one?
We have one of the little movable signs that
Mhm.
collects data. Yeah.
The city has one as well, and we believe that collects data as well. What we could do with the recommendation from this committee is to determine where you want those placed.
Yeah.
The sheriff's office, our traffic team moves our trailer. The plan is that we move it around. It stays in one place for 1 week. And so we collect the data for a full week
Right.
from that location. And actually, I've seen the breakdown of the data, and we can even identify specific hours of, hey, between these hours, these were your highest speed, your lowest speed, where are most people at? It's a great way to remind people
Mhm.
of the speed limit. They get a visual signal that tells, oh, yes, I need to slow down. So it's a great reminder. But then it also helps us determine, when and where the problems are.
Right.
Mhm.
It's, we can all see that at
Right.
specific times that there's a problem, but we can also help us hone
Right.
where we want to focus our patrols, and also tells us if there's not a problem, right? If
Right.
it's out there for a week and the highest speed was 5 over the speed limit, I can show you the proof that, hey, we just didn't have, we don't need to focus on that because. there
And
just
if it's
wasn't-
something in the school zone, I'm sure we could share it with the school district.
Yep.
If there's an issue, I
absolutely.
mean, that wouldn't be a
Yeah.
heavy lift either.
Yep, absolutely. So I think, I mean, I would love the recommendations from the committee on where you would like those
Yeah.
signs and trailers placed.
All right.
And, you know, we can, once ours is up and running and the cities is ready to go, you know, we can get those out fairly frequently. The one from the county, we've worked out an arrangement where it can come over here, once every other month for a week. So we pick a couple spots and if that spot doesn't work, we'll find another one the next time.
I'm sure you know where they all are, so.
Yeah.
Definitely defer to you on those spots.
And one of the number one, since I've been here, one of the number one complaints or the number one complaint that comes in is it's traffic related speed.
Right.
So our deputies know that, you know, I want them out there and paying attention to that. And it's not that I haven't told them, go out and write a bunch of tickets. I just say, hey, you see somebody driving the speed limit, stop them, contact them, let them know they're going over the speed limit. And the issue is issuing a citation is their discretion. So they'll decide if it's, you know, a blatant violation or if it's just something that just a little education will fix.
Excellent.
I have some quick questions.
Absolutely.
And I apologize in advance if it's in here, but I just some notes I took. So that you said 3.15 FTE
Yes.
in the contract. So is that, how does that work? Is that per shift or is that per day?
That is total. And what that is 3 full-time deputies. And then the 1.5 is my position.
Okay. And so if 2 shifts are covered, I don't know what they're called, but I know graveyard is not yet. So that means 3 deputies spread out over 2 shifts. Is that how it works? I don't know how it works.
No, so your SRO works school days and school hours. And then your other 2 deputies. So we do, I didn't talk about this. We do something a little bit different here in Estacada than the rest of the deputies is our deputies here are trying out a 12-hour shift.
Okay.
So they work 3 12-hour days and 1 8-hour day, which gives them their 40 hours for the week. So the 8-hour day is every other week. And so deputy A will be working this week and deputy B will work next week on that common day. So you get a little less coverage on that 8-hour day, but the other 6 days that week, you get 12 hours coverage. So you get more. It used to be 10 hours. So there would be, the contract actually used to be slightly less and it was 7 days a week, 10 hours a day. And now, and that was, I don't remember what that percentage was. Do you?
I don't remember what.
So you had 1 deputy that worked 3 days a week for 30 hours, 1 deputy that worked 4 days a week for 40 hours. It was your 7-day coverage and then your SRO. So what we went to now was the 2 patrol deputies are full-time. So instead of having a day where they both worked, because you'd either have to have one work like day shift hours and one work swing shift hours. And then they would be here different times. Otherwise, if they're on the same schedule, then you'd have 1 deputy here, or I'm sorry, 2 deputies here at the same hours for 10 hours a day.
Okay.
So that's how the schedule works.
So it's a total of 3 per day. 3 deputies
Never
per day.
more
No.
than 2.
Two.
So essentially Monday through Thursday or Monday through Friday, depending on what days the SRO is working. He's
Right.
here Monday through Friday. And then the other deputies are here 7 days a week. So Monday through Friday, there'll be 2. On the weekends, just 1.
So the SRO is at school the whole
Monday
time,
through Thursday.
right?
Mhm.
Right.
And so at any one time, we'll have 1 deputy that would be out patrolling.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes. Now, the
And-
SRO, and sorry. to
Sure.
interrupt,
Yeah,
The
that's
SRO, part of his duties is he does work the school zones.
Right.
So when the flashing lights are on, some days he'll
Sure.
be out there doing traffic enforcement. He is also, he has responsibilities at the other schools too. So he's moving between the schools. He has to, like any other deputy, has follow-up investigations to do, which takes him away from the schools. Sometimes he has to go to to the student's house and go talk to the parents, whatever it may be. And then he also is he is a deputy. And so if the deputy in town needs assistance on something and calls on the radio, he'll leave the school to go help the patrol deputy, just as vice versa, the patrol deputy will go help him.
That probably answers this question. And the SRO, even though it's a different title, is probably contracted at the same rate as the deputy.
Yes.
Okay. And then the 6-month rotation. Is there a reason for 6 months versus longer?
Yeah, so I didn't explain that well enough. It's a good question. So for our contract cities, the sheriff's office works on a 6-month rotation. If I want to change shifts or days off, I have that opportunity every 6 months. If a deputy selects to come work in a contract city, they're here for a 1-year minimum. And depending on the deputy, we were discussing this the other day. Generally, what will happen is, if we look at the larger cities, it's a better example, right? The least desirable shift, this may surprise you, is graveyard, on the weekends, and that's the last one to go. So the lowest in seniority ends up having to work Saturday and Sunday night. And so what would happen is, as the shifts are taken, those are the last to be picked. So you're kind of forced into one of those spots. The benefit for the city of Estacada is when we went to this 12-hour shift schedule, it was very desirable. There's only two for patrol. There's only 2 of those 12-hour shifts schedules for all of the sheriff's office. And so you actually have, one of the most senior deputies working here, and then another guy with a lot of seniority. So they went very quickly. And forgive me.
Are they
'cause I
allowed
just
to
lost my
repeat?
train of thought where I was
No.
going.
So are they allowed to, where I'm going
Oh.
is continuity.
Yes.
And so are they allowed to, these guys like it so much, are they allowed to get first dibs?
They're here until they want.
Gotcha.
Or.
So
And
2
in
more-
an unfortunate circumstance, we asked them to leave, but so that's where, and my apologies, that's where I was going with that. So the deputy that's one of the senior deputies, I was telling Melanie that he will probably be here until he retires. And so, and that might be, 3-4 years. And so you have that longer term connection with someone. He gets to know the business owners and the people in the community. And it gives you that small town, feel that you want from a deputy, right? You get a very experienced deputy that's willing to put in the time to build these relationships. Whereas if it was a less desirable shift, then you might get somebody that's forced in, they're here for a year, and then the one was a little odd this time because we had to address, maybe some flaws in the contract language, because we did not have to deal with a situation where in this flexible model that we had an employee who was deployed in the military. And since they were, cities like, well, we're paying for a position and they're gone for 6 months. The county is trying to figure out, okay, well, how do we get you a new position? Well, we replaced them with someone temporarily. He would love to stay longer if he could, but the other guy selected this spot. So now that he's back, he's going at the schedule change, he's going to come back. So I think that the city of Estacada has what I would consider longer term employees, longer term deputies than you might get in some of the other areas because of who you have, because they want the schedule, they want to work here. So you have that.
And then 2 more questions, but they're related. The contract, does it cover just city limits or what's the geography?
Yeah, the contract would just be city limits.
Okay. And then because there's a whole list of specialized like canine and that kind of stuff, the rescue and all that sort of stuff. We hear helicopters going up the canyon all the time. Has there been any specialized use in Estacada?
Yes. Just a few weeks ago, there was a SWAT call here and so you probably had 30, 40 sheriff's office employees here for.
I'm glad I didn't know.
The SWAT team and the negotiators, all went well.
A few years ago, we had a missing youth, like a young, like 19, 20 years
remember
old,
that.
and there was a big search going on for him. Yeah, so thankfully not too often in that situation, but we do. It's nice to have access, and I feel like there's a good continuity of like the guys who are in the East County, will gravitate this direction if they're not on a call or something. And I feel like that is it's not like, oh, I'm in Estacada, I'm crossing over to somebody else's jurisdiction now, so I'll kind of bounce back that way. They can all flow together really well, so.
You'll see on the, what I'm gonna call the Estacada Police Department Monthly Activity Report. Forgive me, I opened up the wrong one.
And I know you guys have, you have
annual-
other business to do too, I know, so we'll stop here shortly, but.
Sorry,
This is
we
good.
wanted to
Chief.
give you guys
Continue,
some good
please.
info. What was that?
I said I do have a question for
Okay.
Lieutenant Mendoza. So because Estacada doesn't have coverage on night shift pertaining to the East Patrol District, how many deputies are on at any given point in time?
our East County has one deputy.
One deputy.
And we do have some shift overlap, so we have 4 shifts. So there's one deputy per shift in the East County. So basically like the busier times of the day, there'll be 2 deputies.
Okay,
And some things changing with staffing, but essentially, right, you either have 1 or 2 deputies working East County. But then we also have, a traffic team that is out, but they could be out in East County, they could be on 82nd. We mentioned our canines, those generally, those deputies are kind of on a roving patrol and go where they're needed, and if they're not being called to an active thing at the time, then they could be out in East County, right? But essentially you've got 2
okay,
in East County.
okay.
I just had a couple questions, if that's okay. First thing is that recent thing at Ace Hardware yesterday, with that robbery. Clearly, people know who the person is. And that was great to see that immediately come across. Are we noticing more of that happening? Because it seems like from perspective, I also run a nonprofit in town that focuses a lot on this stuff. It seems like from that perspective, it seems to be happening more often, and that it's kind of crime of opportunity because they know Estacada is not fully covered. I don't know if we're actually seeing that in numbers, but it feels that way. Is that true? Is that happening?
Yeah, I would say that that's more of a feeling
Okay.
than what's actual. And what goes into that is the speed of information these days, right? So you can get that information from the news and from the internet, social media, whatever. So you're presented with a lot more information of, hey, these things are happening. They may not be more frequent, it's just you're seeing it more often. What we look at are, our crime stats and our data. They don't show a huge increase. I provided you guys with the annual report. I could pull we may already have this, but I could pull the last few, and so you can compare year after year. The other thing when you're looking at stats, make it interesting. I'm not a statistician, right? But the thing you have to consider is, COVID kind of threw things for a loop. Like we saw a lot of different things during that time. And so, you may want to go back a little bit further. Also keep in mind with the city of Estacada, right? It's been growing for years, right? So your population is growing and your statistics should be growing at that point as well. But comparing Estacada to other contract cities, we're not seeing like a huge spike in crime compared to anybody else.
That's good.
Because this question came up earlier. If you look at the second, I think it's the second slide on yours, where if you look at, there's like kind of a green and a purple circles.
Oh, yeah,
Oh.
yeah.
That shows you, at top of that says Estacada units, purple, and other units, green. That shows you the number of calls that an Estacada deputy went to in the city of Estacada, and the number of calls that a county deputy responded to in Estacada. So you actually slightly more than 50%, 48% was handled by Estacada deputies, 52% was a response from a county deputy. Which makes sense because that is, you don't have 24-hour coverage.
Mhm.
So if there is response from, you have coverage during the busiest time of the day, busiest for calls, and the graph below that shows you, the peak, and you'll see kind of like the steady amount of green through there. So the Clackamas County deputies are responding to an average number of calls through the timeline of the day. And then it spikes for them when the Estacada cars go off duty,
Mhm.
which is kind of showing you that you're getting a lot of extra control from that East County car, essentially.
Okay.
I wanted to show them this too.
Yes, yes.
This is on, this
Oh.
dashboard is on the Clackamas County Sheriff's website. And so you don't have to wait for your monthly report to come up. It's, if you go to the, I'm sharing my screen, so I think people watching can see too. But if you go to the sheriff, it's clackamas.us/sheriff. And then you scroll down to the bottom, call activity dashboards is one of the buttons. You push that. Now I just opened another one. But you can see, Happy Valley, Wilsonville, here's City of Estacada. That, and it pulls up that.
Currently, it just says call activity below.
Mhm.
This is a new feature that we're adding, and we will be adding more options on there as we're able to, but this is just something that we want to provide.
This is for all year, so
Wow.
if you want to just see what happened in November, I don't know if it should, will it show November? Because that's pretty recent. I don't know if how accurate it is. No,
I'm
try
not sure.
October. I'll go back to August. Let's see what happened in August. Oh, it's going slow. Anyway, you can kind of fiddle around with it and see, it shows you where calls were at, what.
What types of calls, locations,
calls, yeah.
it'll tell you whether it was initiated by its deputy initiated or essentially
Public
dispatch,
initiated
public initiated.
or deputy initiated. You can
And-
click on both of those. So
So-
that'll be something you can, look through.
Yeah, if the deputy started the call, I did a traffic stop, or I went out with a suspicious person, that's deputy initiated, everything else is public initiated. Another recommendation the committee can make is, we were just recently talking about whether to increase the amount of traffic enforcement in Estacada. Where that recommendation would be, and we could base that off of the data we get from the speed signs. To me, kind of one of the big complaints that I get is right here on the highway, Highway
Mhm.
244, right? It's the traffic going through. Couple things to point out that it's a state highway, and so it's actually the responsibility of the state police. However, just like I mentioned earlier, right? Everyone's low staff. They have the same issue, and so I talk with the lieutenant over at the OSB, and I'll say, hey, we have these traffic complaints because we share kind of the same goal in that I supervise our traffic team, and they just don't have the bodies to put everywhere. So we could, if it's a recommendation, we could bring members of our traffic team over here, the deputies that work on motorcycle. Their sole purpose, right, is traffic enforcement, traffic safety. And so what I would just caution against is that they have a higher percentage of, we call it what it is, higher percentage of writing citations.
Mhm.
And Why that is, having been a member of traffic team, right? I will set my limit pretty high on, or my threshold very high for when I'm gonna stop somebody. Where, you know, a patrol deputy might say, hey, in this area, I'm gonna stop somebody if they're over 10 miles an hour. If I'm a deputy and I'm specifically working traffic enforcement, traffic safety, I'm gonna say it might be 20 miles per hour. And some people say, well, why do you let people go so fast? It's like, well, because if I spend my time stopping everybody that's 10 miles over the speed limit, right, I'm gonna be stopping a lot of cars and not writing very many tickets because not everybody would deserve a ticket. But if you're 20 miles over the speed limit, you're at that threshold level, you're probably gonna get a citation. It's gonna take a good story to get that out of a ticket, right? Like, there's gotta be a good excuse to like, I was 20 over, you know, I was 40 and a 20, and here's my reason why. So that being said, you know, if you do bring in more traffic enforcement, know that there are gonna be more citations, right? You're not getting that from your patrol deputies because that's not their focus.
Mhm.
But if you did bring in traffic enforcement, that would be the focus. And so we were talking about that the other day, and it's just make sure that you understand, you know, with that recommendation comes more citations.
I know, I was like, maybe, you know, you could educate some people and like, no, if the traffic team comes in, tickets will be written.
Yeah.
And,
A lot of
Yeah.
times it's people that call requesting it, they end up getting stopped and upset about it.
Exactly.
Right. And we're growing as a city.
So,
So we have people with different driving habits other
Mhm.
than being used to stuck behind a tractor.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a big deal, but
And we have a lot of people coming through on the highway that aren't considering that, hey, this is our town where
Mhm.
our community lives
Yeah.
here
Right.
and they're just driving through. And so it's
It's
something
true.
for you to consider as you're,
Those
making
might be
recommendations.
the areas that we focus on is lowering that speed, not the speed limit, but of the actual offenders, the drivers lowering their speed by pulling them over. But just another thing that we can think about.
anyone else have anything for Lieutenant
I
Mendoza?
had something else, but I forgot. Oh, yeah. So you were saying that Happy Valley and Whistleville, they have like 20,000 people, 25,000 people, and they have 20 deputies. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think they were both right around 25.
Yeah,
I
something
think
like
that's
that.
what it's.
Yeah, and forgive me for not knowing their exact numbers, but.
Is
around-
that like the average? Are we kind of under, or are we right on par with our amount of people? we
No,
have?
you know, and earlier I gave credit to the city council for this
Yeah.
because like. When they first asked the question, I thought, you know, it's just not busy enough.
Yeah,
But having that forward thinking that, hey, we're growing and if it takes a year to get a deputy and then
Right.
another year to get another one, I mean, we need to project for the future.
Right.
And to answer that question, Estacada is big enough and is going to be big enough to sustain that.
Yeah.
In my opinion. But it also comes back to it. I really want to emphasize what you're paying for is response time.
right.
You know, until like the sheriff's office is not going to require Estacada to go to the full-time model until they're at 10,000 population. And I don't know, do you know what that projection is for that?
It's a ways out there. I
Okay,
think
so-
right now, the highest projection we have is 8,000 something. When our urban growth boundary is fully built out, so it'll be a while, but I mean, we're heading in that direction. And you
Mhm.
never know. I have been surprised before.
Yeah, so there is time. You know, at least per our contract, there is time to wait to take Estacada up to that service level.
Mhm.
But there's also benefit, and I'm sure as you know, to plan for the future and to know that, hey, if this is where we want to be today, we can't get there for 2 or 3 years. And
Right.
so if we want to be there tomorrow, we need to start planning that. for tomorrow.
Right.
We're
Cool.
talking about gradual growth
Yeah.
isn't necessarily a bad thing. It doesn't have to be something that happens all at once.
Mhm.
But obtaining an extra deputy when we get an opportunity to wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing because this call activity from last year, it does show that we have a need.
Mhm.
I mean, we have like a fifth of the population of Happy Valley and Wilsonville, but our call numbers are up there for,
Oh, yeah, I'm in agreement
yeah,
hundred
I mean,
percent.
we definitely, we do have call volume out here and there is a need for it. And if you do the math on it, it's pretty simple. I mean, we would have more public initiated calls in most other places, but, or at least on this statistic anyway, if you did the math on that, we'd probably have more public initiated stuff than Happy Valley would if we had that
Mhm.
population, so.
Yeah, I'm in full agreement. I think that it's good that we're looking towards another one. I wasn't saying we
Yeah.
don't need any more. I think we do. I was
But
just
I'm also
curious.
not saying either that we need to wait, 3 or 5 years before we obtain another one either. I think as we get an opportunity to, I think it's a good thing to have.
Mhm.
And I had some, I have an interesting idea. I can, not for today, we'll go into more later, but of how, to manage, graveyard positions here, because that's gonna be your slowest time of the day. And maybe how you can share some of that cost with the county, with the sheriff's office. If that's something that everybody's in agreement with. And I've spoke to Melanie, the mayor, about that, and it's a plan kind of in the works, but just because your call volume everywhere drops off graveyard, and you want to keep that interest level up, want to keep people active. So yeah, I think that you could definitely sustain it. And again, like I said, what you're getting is that better response.
Right, which is important.
When will you be coming back to meet with us? Do you have a schedule yet for that, or is this a
I'm-
monthly deal or bi-monthly or what?
Yeah, I'm happy to meet with you whenever. If we're meeting monthly, right?
They're meeting monthly.
My-
So the fourth Tuesday of every month.
Yeah.
But we're
My-
skipping Christmas, I think. So we'll.
Yeah.
Be in
The
January.
reason I'm asking, I want to go back real quick on the SRO situation. Before you come back and meet with us, can you reach out to your retired deputies and find out if there's an interest from them to come in and we need 3 to hit these other schools full time. Of course, summers would be off, obviously, but is there an interest from some of them? And if so, what kind of pay range are they looking at right now to come in and do that, to make it worth their time? So that we can discuss it and see if it's something that the city can afford. But
And-
you're gonna have all those contacts to make that happen for us. So maybe when you come back next time, whenever that is, we can, look into that a little further.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful to know. And we actually hired a retired Clackamas County Sheriff deputy one time he did code enforcement for us for a while. And then he moved on to a more, he needed to actually up his hours, so he went on elsewhere. But, and the city doesn't have any jurisdiction in the schools or authority in the schools as far as saying, hey, we're gonna give you an SRO. So it would definitely be something that I can check with before your next meeting too, and see if the school district might be interested, if that's something they're looking at. Because if it's not something that they're looking at, then we should probably put our our focus elsewhere, because that would be they'd have the final call on that. But I think having some research and some ideas to say, hey, this is what, the Traffic and Public Safety Committee is, they're researching and exploring these things, then we could find out if they're interested in that as well. Yeah.
We'd have to look to see, going back on what you were talking about, we'd have to go back and see like what that would look like. Because even if we were trying to obtain retired law enforcement, we'd have to figure out whose hat they're working under and what certifications that they'd still have to uphold, because
Mhm.
after you retire, I'm pretty sure your DPSST lapses and all of that. And if we brought somebody, or we brought people in to provide that service for our schools, we'd have to figure out what type of training they would need to uphold and what that cost would look like and all of that. So
Mhm.
I have no idea what that would even look like or how that would work, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be, that would either be a city or a school issue to figure, because it would end up being a city school employee.
okay.
Mhm. And I'm not sure if there's other examples in the area, like Oregon City has their own police force. if they, do they have SROs in all their schools? I know there's only a handful of SROs that Clackamas County has, but I don't know if there's examples of others, that we
There
could
are,
follow.
There is no jurisdiction that I'm aware of that has SRO in every school. I want to say Oregon City had two, but now they're down to one, if I remember correctly.
Okay.
Wow.
Mhm. So, but definitely we could explore that, so. Yeah, and Jim, I'm gonna leave it in your hands, what you want to tackle tonight and what you want to skip tonight. I know you wanted to talk about the Main Street Design Workshop planning, but if there's other things that you want to skip, I mean, I'm good on time, but I don't want to.
Yeah, no, I mean, we could just, I guess, hit all the things on the business if you want to just go over those.
Run down, okay.
Is that
we can-
okay?
Yeah, that should
Alright.
work. And then, you're welcome to stay, Lieutenant Mendoza, if you want, or you're
Yeah,
welcome to hit the
I'll-
road if you, whatever you want to do. Okay.
Thank you, by the way.
Yes, thanks for staying. Appreciate that. All right, the first on the commission business is the discussion of proposed bylaws. Please be gentle. I did that like overnight or something. And sent them to Melanie, but if you guys get a chance to look at them, I wasn't always sure on appointments or which ORS and chapter, but I tried to make sure that we had our, annual meeting where we're gonna elect officers and committees and whatnot, and the chair, the vice chair, and how we run the meetings and the powers and duties. And say I left out the Estacada City Code section because I just hadn't gotten with Melanie yet on that. So this is just something quick that I threw together as a volunteer advisory committee. So you guys can look that over in the future. I'd appreciate it. Or have you looked it over and it's wonderful? Okay,
I was gonna say, if it's something that looks, they're pretty basic, and if you're all agreeable to it, Jim and I could work on them together and bring it back to the next meeting. Because I just was gonna throw in some, I could add in the city code, and there's there's some changes that I can make that would bring it into line with what the city code says and things like that. And so if you're good with the idea of this, maybe Jim and I could work and bring.
I read through it a couple times and it
Yeah.
was fine. Nothing.
okay,
Sounds good to me.
It's just dotting i's and crossing t's, really.
Okay.
Cool.
So,
all right,
okay,
I like it.
we'll work on that, Jim.
all right, thank you.
That was easy.
Excellent. Number two, update on transportation system plan progress.
Okay. I will just give you a brief update on this. We don't have any dates for upcoming public meetings to share with you right now. However, they'll be after the first of the year. But we are collecting information on issues or concerns, and this could be walking, driving, biking, transit, wheelchair, skateboard, any kind of transportation was in the email that I got. So anything that you see. We did have an open house on October 25th. I think a bunch of you were here. And the open house and survey that was online just closed last week. So they're going to be reviewing that. There's the city webpage at cityofestacada.org / or / I don't know which one it is, TSP for a transportation system plan. But you can get there on our website, and that they have, so they'll be putting more information on that page about the survey and the information they've gathered. We've posted several social media posts talking about the goals of the project and gaining feedback and publicizing the open house and survey. There's been monthly e-newsletters sent out, and you can sign up for those on that TSP webpage. And so that you will get updated information as you go along. And basically where we're at is we're still gathering feedback on issues and gaps in transportation. And then they'll be compiling information and coming up with solutions. So I think they even have a place you can take a picture. If you're seeing something that's not working transportation wise, or you have a concern about it, you can take a picture, upload it on the website, or email it into us. Or you can just make verbal comments. You can call our planning people anytime. There's always somebody, every day there's somebody on desk who can talk to you. So they're really, right now, we're in the information gathering stage. So that is my current update.
And when does that collection end?
It will end, I think it's going, they won't stop. You can always tell, you can always give them feedback, but
Okay.
they're going to be moving on to looking for solutions,
Okay.
starting, I think, in January.
Okay.
But I don't have a specific date.
Okay.
But they're like, they're almost getting to that transition place where we're gonna have to say, okay, now we gotta move on. We gotta figure out what we're gonna do about it.
Mhm.
But so anything like in the next few weeks, if you want to send in sooner is better. But and anybody who might be listening or viewing this later, this is November 29th. And so as we're moving into December, especially the early parts of December, would be good for the community to provide some feedback on that. So
And
that's what I
and
got.
that's going to be on the city website. And does it go out on Facebook also? I've seen
Yes.
some posts.
Yep, Facebook,
Okay.
some Instagram posts about it.
Okay.
But you can always go to the website and then I think it's /TSP, but there should be a link on that homepage. And you can read more about what this process is, because it's something that gets the transportation system plan gets updated, I think every 15 years or so. And so this is the time. This is when we're not reactive planning, we're proactive planning right now. And so we want to try to make plans going forward that we can run into and not be going, oh, wow, we need to have this now. Instead, we'll try to think ahead, which is challenging, but we can see where any issues are now, and then they'll try to extrapolate that out, figure out how we need to.
So
design
one
it.
of the attachments on the email we got, remember, it had a bunch of attachments and it was like a 2018 transportation plan, like 183 pages. And there was a lot of great stuff on there. But one of the things I noticed, it was there was you ended up prioritizing. So there was like a first project and there was like 3 that were ranked number 2, something like that. And then I was looking at the criteria and one of them, I was looking specifically at 4th because I live up there.
Mhm.
And they ranked the different, you get 4 points for this, 0 points for that, blah, blah, blah. And one of them had to do with the amount of people it was impacting. Well, it's been 4 years now. And
Mhm.
so the amount of people that are impacted by whatever the project is, I suspect is
Has
different.
increased, yes.
And kind of with that, we're at over 5,000 now. What was the projection? Do you happen to know of what we were estimated when we were estimated to hit 5,000?
I don't know when we were estimated to hit 5,000. I know the population forecast from PSU has, I think it was, I don't know if it was 2030 or it might have been 20, I think it was 2040. They thought we'd hit 8,000. I know it could be sooner. But yeah, that's a great point. So in 2018, we were updating just the bicycle and walking, is it bicycling and walking chapters? Because when they did the plan, I think it was 07, when the whole transportation plan was done, they're like, people, they sometimes walk, they sometimes bike, but it's not that important. But over the past decade, it's become, I guess, apparent that it is important to a lot of people. They do walk, they do bike. And so that we redid those chapters because they were very just minimal. And so now we're going back and looking at the whole plan. But yeah, like I said, every 15 years or so is when a plan will get updated. But when we're growing like this, things can change very quickly. So things like that you notice would be good to comment on so that we pick up on those.
Does this count as a comment?
Let me make a note of that.
Gotta get
So
online.
4th
There you
Street
go.
Hill, 4th Street Hill for vehicles or just everything?
Both, everything. Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna make a note.
Save your brakes on coming down 4th.
Yeah.
Just to maintain
Or
25.
it's scary at night.
And do be careful because the guys work very hard to de-ice that thing in the winter time. They're good at it. They know what time of the night to do it. They know it has to be just, the temperature change, if they do it when it's wet and it doesn't work, if they do it when it's freezing, then it gets really, so they know, and they're very good at it, but that's a monster of a hill.
Mhm.
And so sometimes it's best to go around if it's, they'll keep it as clear as they can, but it is what it is. It's the Fourth Street.
It's nice to have alternate routes now because we didn't
Yes.
before.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's true.
All right. All right, moving on to continued discussion of committee priorities from November 1st meeting. I guess we had a couple of those with speeding.
We did, and we talked about that, but like, can I add something?
Absolutely.
Because I was at the last council meeting, I don't know how many of you were there. And they were talking about all these new developments, and it feels like, and I don't know, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Melanie, but it feels like there's a lot of roadblocks in the way of council to stop stuff. Like when it comes to developments, but as more developments come in, traffic is affected, and therefore it kind of affects us. And I wrote some notes about what I kept hearing was if you had requirements in place before these developments try to come in, if this council had set requirements or set, I think requirements was the word they used in the code, they have more ways to kind of calm this down and slow it down. Can we recommend that the council put requirements in there so that, because it feels like there's not very many. And so every time they're like, whoa, we're growing so fast, they don't have an option to stop it.
Mhm.
Can we maybe recommend that they put some requirements in there so that they have options to say, hey, by the way, we don't have the infrastructure for this, and this is the requirement that this is not meeting?
You can make those recommendations, definitely. And I'm not sure what those specifically would be. For instance, if they're, that's what the TSP is going to help, because there's some roads now that are considered a small road, because I don't remember the correct term. And they're not going to be a small road. They need to be like a minor collector, a major collector. And so intersections are critical, like perhaps the River Mill and Eagle Creek Road intersection. And then also just naming or identifying certain roads that need to be improved to handle more traffic. Because they haven't had to handle traffic in the past, and now they will. And so it's thinking ahead about those things. You're right, putting them in the plans, and then the developers, it's a fine line because it's private property. Private property can get developed according to what the code says. And I think, no, we don't want people telling us what we can do on our private property, but we do that with the code. The zoning code says this is what you can do on this property. And so when they meet that, then you're right, we're not going to say, no, we don't want more growth, so you can't do that on your property. But we can be sure that we're ready with the transportation system, with the wastewater facility that we're working on now, that we know this growth is going to continue, and we're preparing ahead of time. And we want to be proactive planning, and the planning commission is working on this too, the proactive planning versus the reactive planning.
Right.
So I think ideas you come up with, if you see transportation issues that are gonna, maybe they're fine now, but they're heading in that way, make recommendations to the council. I think that's what a good use of this committee.
Cool.
Okay, I have one because I attended the city council meeting along with Brandy. And 2 intersections were discussed with that large development going in at River Mill to go all the way up to Cemetery, all the way over to Deuce, and then back down to Eagle Creek. They only discussed Hypel in 224 and River Mill in Eagle Creek. But people are gonna have to take their kids to school, take a left on 10th at the laundromat, and then come all the way up and go to River Mill at 6th. I mean, I honestly think that it should be a 4-way stop at Big Jim's right
Okay.
there. That's just me, but being a dad and a grandfather, that's,
That was one recommendation in the Safe Routes to Schools plan
Right.
too, and I'm like, can you put a 4-way stop there? It seems like it, but yeah, it's, that was one of their recommendations. So yeah, I think, how to do that, how
and then moving over, not to interrupt, but just, I still have it in my head there, on 6th and Main, they recommended a turn lane. So people could get downtown and go in front of the junior high. We kind of took that out last year when we spent all that money
Mhm.
on
That's
that.
right.
And then all the people that are gonna go up to Cemetery that are on the Curran Creek Phase 2 or 3, or from the Deuce development, I gotta come up through Cascadia Ridge and then come all the way down to the high school. So that's even more people. And I, like I said, my concern is Coupland. I don't know if there can be anything done there at Coupland and Cemetery in the future, just because
That's
it's.
been a concern of the infrastructure committee actually
Mhm.
too. They've brought that up multiple times. So yeah, those are good. I
Okay.
think, and how do you, I don't know if you want to like make a have somebody write up a recommendation. If there's certain places that you all agree on, then you can write up a recommendation to the city council and make that recommendation.
I'd be happy.
Yeah.
And the meeting's what, the 15th, I think,
The 12th of December, there's a meeting.
12th, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Who does,
Or they'll be-
who's in charge of like guardrails? Is that the county or the city? If it's at the city of Estacada, put up a guardrail. And specifically like Cascadia Ridge, since you
Mhm.
brought that up. Hundreds and hundreds of people live in that addition and there's more being built in the back.
Mm-hmm.
So the only two ways to get out to cemetery are on Rockwell and Cascadia
Cascadia
Ridge
Ridge.
Drive.
Mm-hmm.
And both of them, as you're coming west towards that stop sign, are on a very steep downhill on the cemetery.
Right.
And cemetery's 2 lanes and there's no guardrails and it's a sheer drop off at Rockwell and at Cascadia Ridge.
Mhm.
So it wouldn't, I don't need a mile stretch. I'm just saying,
Right, just right. So if they're going straight through that guardrail, it's gonna stop them.
yeah, because I don't know how deep that ravine is on the other side, but there's large trees and I'm just seeing the tops of them. So it's pretty steep.
Mhm.
I'm surprised somebody hadn't already, but
Right.
That, I think they've usually stopped short. Well, and some of them do, yeah. If it's slick, that would be that could be another recommendation. Some of these, if the council passes it on to staff to look into, we might need to check in with our transportation engineering to make sure, what's the proper fit or what, if this is the situation, what do we need? Do we need a guardrail here? Do we need, what do we need? Do we need a 4-way stop? But I know that we can find, I don't have all the answers, but yeah, we can make a recommendation to the council and we can pass it on to staff to take looks at those, budget in, what needs to do. We haven't ever installed guardrails to my knowledge, but I'm sure if we needed someplace we could contract with the county to come in and do it or a contractor, yeah.
I have a question. Jim, you mentioned Big Jim's store there. I sat and parked there and watched dump trucks go through. There's a bunch of kids. They're all piled up at the one stop where you cross there. And, I just sat there and watched this stuff happen and it's kind of like, here's a group of kids here, here's a group of kids over here. And I mean, what's the procedure? It's a recommendation, I believe, is what you're speaking of, is to just put another stop sign right here and right here. And those guys don't blow through that intersection. And here's all these kids that have a chance to cross instead of waiting. I grew up in the look both ways and then look the other way again type of school. But, traffic's moving through there quite frequently with big trucks, especially because of construction. And it seems like it could be like a quick fix. A stop sign here, core drill right through the concrete, core drill right through the concrete, put 2 stop signs up.
At Broadway, you mean at Broadway?
Exactly.
Mhm.
And that because the school influxes, they go over there to get goodies, whatever, and breaks, and then after school, the same thing.
Mhm.
And just observing the flow of that traffic and the kids backing up and standing there and waiting for the break to get out. It just seems like that would be a good recommendation to move forward on. And it wouldn't take much for people just to get acclimated to that stop just because of the kids in that zone.
Because people stop right here out on Main Street, right? And they don't need to.
Yes, they do.
Right?
Is
I-
that go for a recommendation at this time, or how do we?
Yeah.
Proceed on that.
How do you guys, what do you think? What do you think, Jim? As
Uh,
far as like collecting these recommendations and I'd like to see them prioritized.
right,
Or at least grouped, and these are like these are high priority recommendations.
Right.
And these are like our secondary ones, but we still think they're important. I wonder if that should be, like, you should come back at the next meeting with although you might want to meet earlier in January if you want to do that.
right.
And then come with what your recommendations are, and then you guys can prioritize them, and maybe
I like
Brandy can
that.
help with doing that, and,
Mhm.
We
And
can
then
try to
somebody-
write something up in December and so we're
mhm.
ready for whether, obviously we can send it to you, you look it over or Lieutenant Mendoza
Mhm. We
or
could take a look at
I
it,
mean,
yeah, and then.
what's high or medium or, not,
Mm.
not a priority.
Yeah, it's weird when you only meet once a month.
Right.
To move stuff forward.
And I don't, I
Uh,
want to make sure that we're, doing the correct public meeting law.
Mhm.
If you would have sent something out, everyone can reply to you.
Right, if I have a
Okay.
question, yeah.
So I mean, we could do that also, or one of us or Brandy, myself could send something to you. And then
Mhm.
you could say, this is what I have. Where do you place these 1 out of 10?
Mhm.
And then every member here could do that. If you want to
Yeah,
do it
you
that
could
way.
all, yeah, if you all want to send. Oh, man, what's the
Well,
best way to do this?
What if I wrote up what we've talked about tonight,
Right.
send it to you,
Okay,
and then you send it to everybody? Could we do that? And they say
we
yes or
could do,
no?
well, we wouldn't want to say, we want to say yes or no. We want to like do that whole process at the meeting.
Okay,
And so, maybe you wanted to just schedule another meeting. To not, because right now, if we skip December, then you're at the end of January. So maybe you just want to meet, maybe you don't want to skip. Well, I kind of want to skip. the
Well, yeah,
December.
because it's Christmas Day.
I
Yeah.
know.
Come on, Saint Nick,
Yeah,
come
I
on.
kind of want to skip. But maybe we could pick a different day, like early in January, so we can send in, if there's any other ones that we haven't talked about, send in those. We'll get together early January, prioritize those. And then, you can make the recommendation to the council based on what you've decided at your meeting. And, then they can send it to staff to figure out, okay, this is feasible. This one has to go to a traffic engineer, how that all goes down the
Oh.
list.
recommendation to council, is that something we do solely in writing, or would we come present it to council?
You could do it either way. I think it'd be good for you to come and just do a presentation, you could have it printed out. And so that we have that in writing but then just come in.
Because they'll have
Present it.
questions, I'm sure.
Mm.
So,
So if we met like early in January.
Okay.
And then you could. When is the January meeting? Second? It's like the 9th of January is a council meeting. So that would be pretty early in January to do it, but what do you guys think? What's your schedule looking like?
when in January, I'm going to be gone probably in the middle of January for about a week or two.
Mhm.
So you
Well,
like the first week.
The
Like the
First week I'll be
Tuesday
here.
is
First week I'll be here.
The 3rd.
The 3rd.
I'll be here for that.
You want to do that? Meet on the 3rd and we'll make a list of priorities for you guys to make recommendations on.
Yeah, I like that.
Or a list of concerns, then you guys can prioritize them. And that would be good. Then we could get it to the council. And then also another thing you're gonna want to do is, I think Sadie sent out a message to the chairs of all the committees. You don't have any new committee members coming on because you're all brand new, so you're on for the next couple of years, but we'll need to make your work plan, so we don't want, I feel like all this work is like ganging up on you all at once. So we want to kind of spread it out and set goals for the year. So by such and such a date, we want to make a recommendation on whatever your priority is. And then maybe we want to do something for a national night out, or you'll
Yeah.
want to be looking at your priorities working on that and at your regular January and February meeting. Actually, you could do it in March too, because you'll have all three of those. And then you'll
Okay.
present that to the council in April for what you're going to be looking at for the rest of the year.
That
But we'll
sounds
kind of
good.
want to pace you out. Don't want to wear you out all of a sudden, but. So you want to plan on January 3rd?
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
fine.
that sounds good.
Okay.
All right with everyone?
I'll make sure this room is available, but I'm 99% sure that it is.
Would that give you time to check on the retired stuff, do you think, or do you need longer?
I believe so. But
Would you be available to come
my
back?
plan, I don't plan on like sending out a huge poll. I'll probably contact 2 or 3 guys
Sure.
and just say like, hey, what are your thoughts on this? And see if I can get some
Yeah,
answers there.
yeah.
Sure.
Good, thanks.
And if I could offer one suggestion that, so the last discussion about the intersection,
Mhm.
something that you might consider if stop sign is the direction you want to push for, but also what I found, what I see is pretty effective are those flashing lights at crosswalks also. And then that would slow traffic on demand instead of all the time. If that's, and if slowing it all the time is the intent, then a stop sign is probably the way to go. If it's specifically for kids during daylight hours, school hours, things that the flashing lights on crosswalks tend to be very effective.
And I have a question for you, Chief, in regards to that. If you drive around town, and look at the crosswalks and then Googling crosswalks, I didn't know that there were so many types of crosswalks. So, I mean, we have the one at the high school and then we have the one further up by Pierce or Shafford, I think, up that way, but they're all different. I mean, is that something that we can do to uniform it? Or like you said, you're gonna put all the lights and speed limit sign? Can we put the blinkers in the street on these crosswalks since it's the school zone? Or like Carrie suggested, even having, like you said, right there at right near Big Gems. I mean, you
Yeah,
got
I
kids
think-
from Rivermill walking and they're coming out and they're elementary school age, crossing the street. High school kids going across the street to Granny's or playing a cup of Joe. That's a pretty high pedestrian area there.
Yeah, I think that my understanding that, this committee is in the right position to make those recommendations that
Okay.
probably anytime you're talking about traffic safety and engineering, I'm going on a limb that the engineers would agree with me that uniformity is desired.
Mhm.
If every marked crosswalk in the city was uniform, like people will identify that easier. And
Right.
maybe the problem locations, the ones that that are the ones that stand out a little bit more with those flashing.
Okay.
lights.
Those light ones really work. I go through them at Malala and Woodburn
Yeah.
every day and they really work.
Okay, good. I like it.
We're talking about the solar powered guys. Is that what, you don't have to run power to it? Is that?
Yeah, I think that's definitely an option. I quickly Googled some of that the other day. So what I find. What I'm talking about is specifically the rectangle lights with the LEDs. And I think you have an option of powering that with solar or hardwire. The other one that we had looked at is, that I find really effective. I see it in the city of Canby. There's other cities that have them, is the speed signs with the radar on them, but they, some flash your speed, some don't, but the ones that have lights, that maybe, frame the speed and then just come on and flash when you're going too fast.
Mhm.
Those are very effective for drawing your attention to the speed.
Cool.
Awesome, thank you. All right, does anyone else have anything on priorities or are we gonna?
Let's move on and let's you and me kind of work on
Okay.
something, before January 3rd.
Okay,
So that we can come back with an organized way to have people weigh in on these priorities.
high, medium and low. All right.
Okay, I think that'd be good.
Let's see, moving on to appointment of subcommittee for hazards mitigation advisory committee.
Yes, we would like to invite, so we talked about this a little bit last time. And so rather than having the whole committee, this is a meeting that'll happen during the day usually. And so if there's, I think we have plenty of people who have flexibility. But if there's 2 or 3 of you that would like to volunteer and the rest of the committee is agreeable to, if more of you want to join, you could do that. Or if you want to all try to attend, that's fine, but this will be like specifically for the hazard mitigations, which is wildfire, wind, winter storms, all those kind of things that are natural hazards that come through, and how can we engineer like with stuff we build or stuff, ways that we prepare to face if these things come, how are we gonna evacuate? If we have a flood like we did, like now the culvert that goes by the library, probably not gonna back up anymore because it's engineered to take the water that's gonna flow through there. Things like that is kind of what this committee is gonna talk about, which also rolls into public safety and evacuation and things like that. So if, I don't know how you guys, I would recommend just 2 or 3 of you who want to volunteer to do that. But if y'all want to participate, we can keep you posted and have you. It'll include somebody from the school, somebody from fire, somebody from the sheriff's office, our public works, somebody probably from city council, and then we all kind of just put our heads together and evaluate it. So
Did you say those meetings are in the daytime?
they will be during the daytime, during like regular work hours, typically when we have those.
Do I have any volunteers?
I'll do it.
How many? 2? Is that good?
2 is good. We could have 3 if anybody else wants to.
2 so far, but
2.
if we want others to join, we can.
Yeah, well,
Okay.
and we'll keep you posted on it. They can keep you updated, or if they feel we need more. But so Brandy and Casey.
Right.
will
Thank
have-
you for
okay, yeah.
volunteering.
We'll add you. I'm not sure like when we'll have a meeting. Typically, we only have a meeting a couple times a year. Typically, we're supposed to have a meeting a couple times a year. We haven't in a while, but I have a new person in charge of that, so I think we will. Because I was failing to have meetings a couple times a year. But yeah, Casey and Brandy will keep you posted on that.
Excellent.
And then if anybody else decides you want to do it, we can let you know also. All right, and then I think it's your big
Okay.
Main Street.
Main Street
Design.
Design
Mhm.
Workshop Planning
Mhm.
and
I don't know if everybody's in on this, or if they've, if you've talked to everybody already, if you want to like share your idea out
well, I'm
loud.
gonna let
Like Perry.
Mr. Dobbs take it from here since he's the master.
Here's
here on
my
this.
thought. Totally open for suggestion here, but I say perhaps we set up a working model with cones that are about 4 feet tall, they come from the county, with yellow tape, and we do a mock setup prior to the construction of this project. We wouldn't impede any of the traffic flow for the businesses. But we could take one day. I have a resource of a lot of people that could help, or we would designate folks just to give the people in town an idea of what's coming. As far as the road being decreased in width. And also these things are just cones, rubber cones that could be supplied. And what happens is in this mock-up scenario, you would get a taste of how parking would be, what it'd be like for the people that have trailers and trucks to come through the town. And they could voice an opinion on how they would actually see what was a preview of what is coming. I've been in construction for quite a few years. We do a lot of mock settings up, interior work, exterior work also, and it gives the advantage of timeline to change things that would need to be changed, especially on corners. There's a lot of trailers, people coming into Ace Hardware there, off of that street right in front of us here, where that bus is going to land. And it would give in a short amount of time, it would give a realization of what's coming. And there would be enough time for alterations. And I would be glad to work in that dynamic to kind of set that up for a day. Once again, not impeding the station or anybody's businesses. But these rubber cones are great. You can thread them with yellow tape and you can get a picture of what's coming. I know there's on the street right across from us, a lot of the parking at the angle, if you have a truck that's a four-wheel drive, that's a quad cab, you go to back up, everybody stops. You're back in, sticking out, cars come through there, you're over the line. The depths are important for each vehicle and the angle of the cars that are parking in there along the streets as drawn on the project. I think it's a good thing. The project's nice. It throws the beautification up and mirrors some of the street over here. But if it doesn't function real good with the rural community, a lot of small cars, it works great. But we are a rural town. And we've got a lot of vehicles that are large, and I think the accommodation of that would be a good snapshot of what's coming.
I like that idea. Since our last meeting, I went and actually talked to a few neighbors because I don't have a truck or a trailer, but these guys do, and every single one of them hit that corner heading up Fourth, every single one.
We've all done it.
Yeah, and then with that model with the cones and then having a big sign or a placard, call this number if you've got comments or some way for them to
there would be
communicate.
public input, I think, and that's the basis of government, is the people's voice. So we have now would possibly be a response of, hey, that works great, we like it, or hey, let's change that. Let's don't do that. Let's don't bite this thing off and then get stuck with something.
It's good.
I love it.
I don't know if this could be something that we take pictures of and post on our website or under our section on the city website. So we can show the city what we're doing,
I think
letting them know
that
about Main
would-
Street or,
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. I think sooner than later.
yes.
Because our engineer is working on they're gonna come back to the city council at the December 12th meeting with the next, the design based on what was talked about at the last council meeting. I don't know about leaving them up for all day. Is there restrictions on what we can do on the roads? I wouldn't think so. I was thinking just part of the
As
day
long
maybe.
as- Yeah, no, with what they described, I think that's fine.
I was thinking you might want to get the fire department involved also. Make sure that and I gave you the printout. I don't know where it's at. So you can kind of see how wide the road is, where the bump
Yep.
out radiuses go. If you need, sounds like you have specialized cones for that. We just have regular traffic cones. But Public Works could supply some of those if you would need those. I was thinking a Saturday morning, kind of early before it gets too hectic.
That's fine.
So
Yeah.
that you guys aren't out in the street with cars. But I know once you have them set up, you'll be on the sidewalk and then you could do your driving around and.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've wanted to do that previously because I can't tell what it looks like on paper, what it's gonna be like out there. And I just haven't had the bandwidth to make it happen. So if you guys can do it.
Looking at the
Let's
numbers
do it.
on it, it's kind of, that's minimum width.
Right.
If it's 17 feet from from one side of the road to the other, it's 8.5 foot per lane, and
Mhm.
Ooh, I
If
don't
you-
think did I copy the wrong one?
that's what mine shows here.
Yeah,
between
that's-
third and
Mine
fourth.
shows 20. Oh, I see
Yeah,
on,
between
okay,
third and
that's,
fourth, yeah.
17
Yeah.
on
And
one
if your
side.
average camp trailer is 8.5 feet wide,
Right.
Yep.
you're wall to wall in that lane.
Yep.
Yeah, that's kind of, it's a little nerve wracking.
Especially
it-
since Main Street is what people use when they can't get down Broadway.
Right, yeah, yeah.
so I'm
Dump
looking at,
trucks.
I see
Yep.
Main Street being 20 feet per lane. Closest to the highway, 17 feet per lane. Once you get up into the next block, and
Oh, I
then the
didn't
other
gather
road's
that it was-
14.
That it was 17 feet per lane. I thought it was 17 feet from,
That's by the Ace, right?
Yeah, by
Yeah,
Ace, it's
by Ace.
17 feet per lane.
Oh, okay.
Whew,
That-
yeah.
Goodness.
Yeah.
gracious, Yeah.
Yeah, 34.
And the reason that's more
Okay.
narrow is because that's if we put that angled parking in there,
That's
it's gonna
right.
narrow down the lanes to 17 feet.
Where
Oh.
McCrae's is on the
Right,
right side, okay. Or
And then
top
as
side.
you go more towards the highway, the lanes would widen out to 20 feet each. But on the side, like on third and fourth, they are 14 feet wide each lane. And so when you're making, like if you're turning on to fourth,
Yeah.
or off of fourth, those are the kind of probably the turns you're gonna want to check out.
Right.
And we do have, these are traffic engineered, so like they're supposed to be good numbers. But it's good to see what it's really gonna look like, I think. It's definitely gonna be a different feel than Broadway because Broadway, the lanes are only 12 feet or just under 12 feet each. But here it should allow traffic to flow a lot better while still helping the pedestrians. And then another thing I would ask is people are really liking the carryover of the circles. But when you're talking about the crosswalks and people getting across safely, I don't
Mhm.
know that. I just worry that it'd be I don't worry, but I'm concerned that we should have those big continental crosswalks going across Main Street versus,
Right.
and I'll just say it, they're ugly. They're not like these cool circles, but I feel like if you have the continental crosswalks, which we can't even get the, it's that stuff you burn down now, you paint them or you thermoplastic. You can't get
Plastic.
thermoplastic right now. And there's definitely crosswalks around the school zone that we need to paint. Digressing to crosswalks, but we're having trouble getting those supplies. So anyway, just another thought while you're doing that, see what you think about the crosswalks and pedestrians going up and down the street and crossing streets and what that would feel like too. But I think if you guys want to set it up, I don't think you need me there. If you want to do it
Well,
Saturday.
we
Yeah.
wanted to invite the city
the city
council
council.
Yeah.
also.
I've given them a couple of heads up that
Okay.
you're probably going to do something like this. So if you
Okay.
guys pick a time and a date, I can let them know. And
Let's do
if
it.
you want to do it, this weekend's kind of nasty weather-wise, but I don't know if it's gonna get better.
Columbia.
Yeah.
There you
It
go.
should probably be, my thought is, even in the nasty weather, it's probably gonna be worse as if, for people to realize, and if folks bring, the parking situation, we can set that up too,
Right.
with the cones,
Mhm.
using those. We'll try to mirror, my thought is to try to mirror exactly what we have here and measure it off and get the same dimensions so that there's an actual feel of what's coming. And with that, you had mentioned that we have access through the county with the cones.
No, I don't have access to the county, but our public works has cones.
Okay,
They're not really tall cones, but they're like regular traffic.
sure.
The
height
ones we
cones.
use
Yeah.
for Spooky Walk, they're pretty good size.
Mhm.
Who would do the contact? Would it be up to us to contact or you?
I'd probably put you in direct contact with Don, who's our public works director.
Okay,
And that way he could let you know how many he's got and you could say how many you want and you could pick them up. So Public Works doesn't work on Friday. So you could pick them up on Thursday and just have them if you want to do that, if you want to do it that way. I don't know if you want to do it this weekend or next weekend. Saturday morning,
do you
Sunday
think, Carrie?
morning.
probably a Saturday. I mean, this is open for everybody, but that's probably less traffic, but still people are moving around.
Mhm. And if you start early, 8
Yeah,
o'clock
very
or
early.
something,
Yeah.
yeah.
Ideally, the cones that we've used before, they're probably about 3 feet tall and they have an opening in them where you can pull tape through, the
Mhm.
yellow caution tape. And those work great, for
Mhm.
designating marked areas and stuff. And so, but once again, not impeding anybody's business or stopping anything. And there's no violation in this, right? There's no.
No.
Nothing's,
No, you'll be fine.
okay,
Yeah.
cool.
And then just wear, like, if you have vests, you have yellow safety
Mhm.
vests, we probably have a
Yes.
handful of those, but
We
make
have
sure
some
that
too.
Okay.
anybody who's setting those cones out
Yeah.
Cool.
is visible, good and visible.
Mhm.
And then, but I think for the most part, you'll be, back on, once they're set up, you'll be back on the sidewalk and observe, making observations, take some photos, drive your trucks around, whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you want to do this Saturday or do you want to do next Saturday? What do
Pardon
you,
me?
what do you,
Which
next Saturday? Which Saturday? do you want?
The third or the 10th?
Probably
Is
the
it-
10th would be better.
Okay,
I
10th.
think we'll make sure that we have the supplies we need and the folks that
Just to
would
plan
help.
it out a little bit, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I could let the council know.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah, the 10th. That would be good.
10th, there we go.
December 10th.
What time? Carrie?
We would probably start at 7:38, something like 7:30, probably be realistic.
Start setting things up and,
Nice.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just start pulling stuff out. People maybe sleep in a little bit on Saturday, but yet there's a lot of activity with construction here.
Right.
We're growing.
yeah, you can, there's a lot of construction things sitting around you could probably just use. I've been trying to get somebody to pick those up.
Oh, goodness.
Okay, so let's plan it. We'll plan it for December 10th. I'll let the city council know, set up, we'll start about 7:30, but if they want to roll in around 8 o'clock
Yeah.
or something, they could check it out and
They need to bring donuts.
bring donuts. and coffee.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
okay. I thought, I was afraid you're gonna set it for this, this Saturday, and I have an obligation this Saturday, and so.
We'll give us some time
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
coordinate with Public
Okay.
Works and
Yeah.
yeah, we'll do
Okay,
that.
so I'll send
It's
Carrie
before the next meeting, so.
the contact info for Don,
Yes,
and I'll give him a heads up.
thank you. That's good.
Sweet. Okay,
All
I
right.
think it'll be great.
So we just have commission report and comments. We don't have anything yet.
Yeah, unless if anybody if you want to go around and anybody wants to share anything.
Oh, and Mitch, welcome. I
Yes.
apologize for not saying hi at the beginning of the meeting. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Okay, and anybody else have any comments or things to share?
So I just want to thank Lieutenant Mendoza for coming this evening.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
appreciate
thank
it.
you so
I know it
much.
helped me out a lot going through all that, and I
Definitely.
appreciate the homework. Awesome.
Cool.
So if no one else has anything, make a motion to adjourn the meeting. All right,
Okay.
meeting adjourned.
All right, Jim and I have some work to do between
Oh, yeah.
now and December 3rd. I mean, January 3rd.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good meeting. What time is it? My daughter better do